debate is not about how to equalize completely and neutralize the position. But now the question is that now I have an advantage. So can I win the game? How to maximize my opportunities in a practical game to win? F3, which was played right now, it's a very logical move because white wants to bring the king to F2. And I think somehow, in some way, also the bishop from G3 will be replaced either on F4 and go to that diagonal to stop the passed pawn on D3, or also possibility to play maybe bishop F2, bishop D4, but that we'll see. So while Ding is thinking, okay, I have a better position, how to press, how to maximize the difficulty for my opponent to defend, of course, it's a question, because to have a better position and to win, it can be very far away. It can be a very big distance. And right now, this is the big question for Ding. Can I really take the lead again in the match, which would be extremely crucial for him right now? And for Gukesh, of course, after this cold shower that he had to realize what has happened, now he will not give up. He's not going to drown in 5 moves. No. Now he will go in his meditation, as we see now also. He's closing his eyes and he switch in his brain. Okay, this is what has happened. What happened, happened. I don't take any care of that. I will be discussing that after the game. I'm focusing what has to be done here. I have to make damage control. I have to make sure that I stabilize my position. I make a fortress as much as possible, try to make every opportunity to exchange the knight, to exchange the rooks. Of course, the rook exchange would give a great chance to save the game. This is going to be the battle. So now it's saving or losing. While for Ding, it's like, can I convert this advantage into victory?
And I think that Gukesh will show a lot in this defensive effort, because even this first move, F3, not an obvious move, but I really like that decision because he can, as you said, bring the king closer to the action, reroute the bishop to a better diagonal. Of course, the bishop on F2 stares not just the knight, but maybe sitting on this D4 square could be useful. And if Gukesh is able to dig deep and hold this game, he'll breathe a huge sigh of relief. But on the other side of things, Ding, he should be feeling very confident about his level of chess. I mean, he just played every accurate move. He was gifted an advantage. It is far from winning. Let's be clear about that. That this position, if it is eventually won, it will require more slips from Gukesh. And, he will be put in tough positions where if Ding can earn a win, that would not surprise me that much. But so far away, I don't want to talk about results. It's clear that Gukesh, he didn't see knight to d3 in that moment. He misevaluated something, and now it's up to Ding to channel the Ding that's been throughout his entire career, the one that takes these technical positions and squeezes and tries to nurse that advantage. So maybe we should talk about specific moves here, because one idea that we have talked about is knight c4, which does force the knights off the board, but it's a very committal decision. So if we can analyze here, I'm wondering, Judith, knight c4, your knight's under attack, the b2's pawn's under attack, so you in all likelihood are going to take on c4, or maybe you have bishop f4, we can talk about that in a sec. But I guess my big question for you is, this position, would you feel, I don't want to say comfortable, because nobody would be comfortable having the white side of this position, but do you feel like white has good practical chance to hold, or are black's practical chance to win greater?
I think white has a great practical chance to hold the game, and the reason is because I believe white can go rook e4 and to defend himself and protect against the d-pass pawn from d4, where it stops the potential d2 and also covers the d file. So black cannot go with the rook to d8. So it's a great potential defensive idea, I believe. And the question is whether black can open up the position with f6 and then get into e2 to the second rank with his rook. That's a big question, but for sure black is playing for a win, right? So now it's an evaluation question by Ding, whether after exchanging it on the knights on c4, do I have enough winning chances here to press? Because it's not so easy to break in for black at all.
No, I think just to sort of show some ideas, one would be b5, b4, of course, getting your rook behind and trying to open up a file for the rook. Because if this black rook gets into enemy territory, then we're looking at the start of what would likely be a nice winning attempt for black, but that's easier said than done. You mentioned the rook coming to d4 to stop that passer. That makes perfect sense. And then the question is, how does this rook get in the game? b5, b4, to b4. The downside is trading pawns may liquidate a little bit too much, and white can always play a3 just to try to trade more pieces. And this is the only open file really at the moment, the d file, which white would have under his control. So, Judah, it's not easy to see the way forward. If this rook could get active, you mentioned f6 and like a rook e2, or even maybe there's like a slower path. Can I bring my rook to the 6th rank? These are difficult questions to answer in advance, but look at it, knight c4 on the board. So, Judah, that means that Ding believes in this as his best opportunity to win, because there is no dialing back now. The knights, they're going to be traded.
Well, it's the most obvious move in this position, and it's a very logical continuation to play for Ding, because it's clear that he wants to eliminate all the opportunities for white to play for any tactical ideas. And from now on, after exchanging, it will be black who will decide how to try to press from every angle in this position. So it's a very understandable, practical decision.
Yeah, this is not a position that I would envy anyone having from the white side. And there are really two moves here. Knight takes knight or bishop f4 to defend the knight on d2, hoping that in the event of an eventual knight takes b2, the rook will slide over to b1. I guess I can just show this, that knight takes b2, rook to b1, and I see the evaluation bar dipping, black clearly ahead, and I guess you could go back to c4, but also knight a4, just trying to take on c3. That doesn't look pleasant either.
Yes. This is possible to try it with white to play bishop f4, and this is something Gukesh has to be taking in account. I don't know how it goes forward. White is grabbing the b7 pawn, and then how black is continuing right here. Black can take knight c3 actually, because there is this knight e2 fork check, and after rook d7, black can capture it, but white, without too much of a hesitation, he took on c4.
Okay, he takes on c4, so that line is irrelevant. Maybe for future analysis and for people who want to improve their endgames, definitely take a look there. I know Mikhail Shereshevsky, that's one of those you can include in the endgame strategy books, but here we see protected passed pawn, rook e4 play, good call by you, Judith. So now the question is, how does black proceed? Okay, you protect c4, that much is obvious, but what is the way to sort of try to create another weakness or trying to activate? How do you see Ding approaching this position?
Well, black has to defend first the pawn. The question is where black wants to be having his bishop in the long run. But if, let's say, on e6 he's just happy to have, then he's going to play bishop e6. The big question will be how black will be able to stabilize his king. Let's say if we can bring up our analyzing board, then we can make some moves, because in principle, of course, I think white made the best possible defensive idea by playing rook e4 in the last move, because it's very important, especially in these kind of positions, to have your pieces very active. And so after bishop e6, white goes rook d4. If black can bring his king, let's say I could make like at least 3-4 moves with black, or I can ask also 8-10 moves, then I would be dreaming of having my pawn on g5. I would bring my king to f5, g6, f5. I would play a5, b5, b4. I would put my rook on b8, and then open up there and use my rook for activity and try to grab more pawns on the queen side. So what white is going to be doing against it, of course, everything in order that black has not be able to do all this. But black will have to fight very hard in order to get something like this, because white has a saying there, everywhere he's going to be trying to protect himself. But the question is how? Can white really do everything against b5, a5, rook b8? Probably white tries to play king f2, that's for sure. I think it's hard to imagine for me that not king f2 is the best and the most natural move which has to be played, getting closer to the passed pawn on d3. Also, the bishop from g3 possibly can play. Sometimes it's an option. Let's say if white would have a dream, white would play king f2, play bishop f4, so only one move would be enough for white to consolidate in some degree, bishop h4, exchanging the rooks, and then it's a draw because black has not enough resource in the opposite color bishop endgame to win. One d3 protected passed pawns is not going to be enough for sure. So black has to be very accurate and has to understand this. Black has to open up the position in one way or another. That will be the secret to win the game, but it's a long way to go.
It certainly is. I really find what you were saying instructive, that if the king were closer, because just to show that, let's say I'll just make some moves real quick, that if you want rook d8 check, your point is extremely well taken. The white king needs to be in the box, right, in the square, because you need to stop that pawn with your king. Unfortunately, after d2, your king is not in time, so the king would already have to be on f2, which means that black has one extra tempo to orchestrate a plan, that if you want to avoid the rook exchange, you will have to make sure that once the king hits f2, your rook gets out of there. So in the event of this rook d4 sequence, one idea that comes to my mind, in addition to what you said with like a g5, king out, is eventually going rook c8, rook c6, and just doing a little bit of rook lift on these two squares, and just trying to pester these queenside pawns, because white's rook is active and doing a great job in defense, but it's also not going to help on the queen side. If this rook could go on d2 instead, it's passive, that's the downside, but at least it protects this b2 pawn. So I'm wondering if there is a future where this rook can just zoom on over to the queen side over here and try to just poke at these pawns, because that's often how you win these games. You have a pass pawn, it's protected, that's great, but you need to open up a second front and create a second weakness.
Well, if rook on d2 would be the better option, the better defensive plan, it is still so difficult to choose that because you want to play actively so much. I mean, you're down positionally, you have allowed your opponent to have a passed pawn on d3, and I mean, you have to have your active rook. And it's interesting that bishop actually decided to bring the bishop to c6 and wants to have, the c4 pawn is not takeable right now for tactical reasons because black goes rook d8 first and d2 is unstoppable. So, but hold on, it means it can be a pawn. Look at that. This is a problem for white because f3 pawn is hanging. So if you cannot take on c4, you have to go rook d4, but bishop f3 can be taking a pawn, but then king f2.
And bishop h5. He does steal a pawn, Judith.
Indeed. But, bishop is quite strange on h5.
It's one of those things, right? We talk about giving up a pawn for activity. I think black, in some ways, would rather have equal material but a better bishop than on h5.
But he has a pawn up and the passed pawn.
Yes, for sure. Although the white king can quickly go to e3, and then that would free up this rook to start doing some damage on the d file. So it's one of these trade-offs where I would take the extra pawn. I'd be happy with that. But I also need to acknowledge that the rook on d4 will become an active piece that can participate in some of the queenside pressure.
That's true. And rook d4 is on the board after bishop c6.
And so now is the big question, Judith, that bishop takes f3. That seems to be the whole idea behind putting the bishop on c6 to begin with. So if he doesn't take on f3, it's a little strange, right? Why is the bishop sitting on c6? And if he does take on f3, up material, still has this passed pawn, but bishop goes to a sidelined location. It's a bit awkward, but material is material. And I mean, Ding, I'm looking at him right now, like, he doesn't seem like he feels confident he'll win this game, but he keeps looking up, he's glancing, and he is playing good chess overall. That's for sure.
I'm not sure bishop c6 was the best move, to be honest, because in such positions, not necessarily pawn would count, an extra pawn. The piece placement and the possibility how black can break into the white camp, that's what matters much more. And also the white king can be rushing into activity after bishop f3, king f2 with the tempo.
Yeah, it does seem like he's unburdened Gukesh, because I think the biggest mental hurdle was Gukesh was going to be passive and tied down. Now the issue is he's going to be down material, but at least his pieces will be freer. So, John, I know you've been looking at this game eagerly, trying to figure out, is this going to be a press for a win? Is Gukesh going to dig deep and hold? I mean, what do you make of what we've just seen where Ding chose bishop c6 rather than protecting his pawn? He can win material, but he is not moving quickly at this stage.
No, he's really not. And I feel like, I don't know, especially after Ding got the opportunity to press, I thought bishop c6 was interesting, because the more you swap off here, especially if you get to a situation where you start swapping off a pair of rooks, the opposite colored bishops, of course, even with a pawn up or a pawn down, might not make that much of a difference to the game result, right? So it's on Ding really to decide to what extent he wants to press here, and I'm wondering if bishop c6 will have some longer term implications that maybe I just can't see right now. At the end of the day, it's still black, who I think is the only player who's pressing, but Judith, aside from clearly having the better position over the chessboard, actually converting this into an obvious endgame advantage is far from straightforward.
It is very, very far from converting this into victory. And I'm not even sure if white plays the best that then it's possible for black to win. It should be a very long game, and trying to pose as many problems and challenges for Gukesh by Ding. But I'm not sure how much it will be the case, because I see that Gukesh, he completely recovered. He knows, okay, I'm going to be defending this. And it's a big psychological question if in this game Gukesh will be able to make an easy draw, or even just a draw, not an easy draw, but even suffering in the next 20, 30, 40, whatever number of moves. It's going to strengthen him with the fact that even if I blunder, even if I have a very difficult position, I can manage myself. And I pull the brakes, and then I just go for defense, and I can do it. So in any way, it's whatever going to be the result of this game, it will affect the emotional, psychological part of the game, of the outcome of the match for sure. But of course, we'll see whether we are going to have a decisive game still.
Okay, so Ding Liren very much in the driver's seat right now as bishop takes f3 gets played. So we're going to be seeing what Gukesh does in response. An instant king f2, and the bishop goes straight back, absolutely no questions asked. And now we're going to be deciding what we want to do next. And while we wait for Gukesh to make his next move, you can own a piece of chess history just like we are watching over the board here in Singapore, because we are celebrating my great predecessors being added to Chessable. So we're giving away 3 signed copies by Garry Kasparov himself. We're going to be picking 3 random Chessable Pro members to win. So if you're not already a pro member, you can join during the World Championship sale happening right now, and that enters you into the draw automatically. The winners will be selected on the 2nd of December and announced live on the final day of this broadcast. So don't miss your chance. Go to chessable.com/pro. Gukesh now contemplating next actions. A pawn has been lopped off the board, as you guys can see there. And Ding to decide what to do next. We'll be back in a few minutes.
my 3-day vacation. Generate a photo of a muscly capybara.
Explain the concept of supply and demand with OpenStax.
Hi Gemini, quiz me on the rise of industrialization.
Can you help me find an email?
Yeah, I can help with that.
Okay, welcome to the big show. Guys, who do you think is going to win the World Championship match? On the count of 3, you have to say the name. 1, 2, 3.
Ding!
Wow. Wow. Okay, well now we have some content.
We bonded.
Who wants to explain themselves first?
No, it was like just to say
Okay, well,
something which is not
fascinating.
expected.
Yes,
you know?
but we both thought the same without agreeing on that, which is remarkable.
Well, I would love the conversation to happen about that because I actually think
Just
Gukesh
I know what
I think
Anish
Gukesh is going to win.
No, I know.
No.
We both also think Gukesh is going to win.
But just for you, we did
for
the
you,
thing
yeah.
where we both thought.
We both thought the same.
And
yes. It'll look.
And it's so obvious that it's Gukesh that we're
And
gonna
we should
say
say
Ding.
Ding. Yeah.
You guys are fascinating. Okay, so explain, why is it obvious that it's Gukesh?
Well, obviously with the recent form and not already before Olympiad the trend was that way, but after Olympiad it got even much more so. Gukesh won the gold on board 1 and such an amazing performance, amazing games, and Ding struggled so much also. I mean, the games he had were so rough. And,
I mean, it's just very obvious, yeah. I mean, there's nothing much more to add. Like, Ding has been struggling so much. It's a pity that he hasn't found even the glimpse of his earlier self.
Yeah.
So that's the worrying part. Like, at least if there was some tournament where he was showing some spark, like the old Ding, it would inspire some confidence. But I didn't see it since he has become world champion, which is a pity.
Have either of you guys talked with Ding Liren since this? What I don't even know how to evaluate what these last couple of years have been. Right? Obviously, they've been very tough for him.
well, the things I haven't talked to him much before that either. I mean, it's not just the language barrier, but also I guess it's quite close. We also not too close. We're competitors at the time as well, and it would be strange to start talking now. You know, let's say if somebody I knew well was going through this, I would have definitely tried to talk or consider that much more. But with Ding, I never talked to him before, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we barely just exchanged some pleasantries. He's very soft-spoken, doesn't speak much.
Yeah.
Person, so hard to know what's really going on.
This December, the world's top chess minds clash in the heart of New York City at the Fide World Rapid and Blitz Championship. Witness world number 1 Magnus Carlsen and other stars from across the globe. Rapid and Blitz, chess in its most thrilling form, unpredictable and unforgettable. Fast moves, tactics and blunders, and moments that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Witness the pinnacle of chess excitement. Get your tickets now at worldrapidandblitz.fide.com.
Welcome back, folks. We have strained every sinew in our broadcast-capable bodies to bring you back early from this break because so many moves have been played. It's looking like the conclusion of the game is coming quickly. I've got a lot of questions. Robert Hess and Judith Polgar are going to take it away from here, but Robert, I'm going to leave you with this thought. We went to break with Ding looking like he was the only player that could possibly press, and it feels like we've liquidated so quickly. This has got to be premature, right? Even to a player like of my standard, I'm going, there must be a reason he's doing this so quickly.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, John. And we see the players operating on their color complex. Black has all the control of the light square, so white is actually up a pawn now. Judith, I know we can't believe it, but they are about to make a draw. We can see them repeating moves here. King d3 to e3, king f5 to e6. A draw is a fair result in this current position, but Ding clearly did not maximize. The players are just about to sign the score sheets. You see them looking at each other. Here's the handshake. Game 5 is in the books. We still have a tied match. 2.5, 2.5 is the score. But for Ding Liren with the black pieces, he played solidly. He played well for most of the game. But then when he had the advantage, Judith, he did not maximize and not even close.
Well, I was speechless in the very beginning when Gukesh plays 3e takes d5 exchange variation, and I can repeat myself. I'm speechless now what has happened and witnessed the last several moves and the decision of Ding Liren, because it seems like the mindset of Ding Liren was to come today to the game and to make a draw. And whatever happens, he takes that. And it's unbelievable for me how it could happen that once you could see that Gukesh started to have a difficult position after knight d3, and it was clear that it's practically only Ding Liren, only black who will be able to push it. It was kind of a dream scenario in a World Championship match that you have 2.5, 2.5, and you have the black pieces and you're pressing it. But somehow, for some reason, Ding did not feel that he has those kind of opportunities, or he wants to spend too much energy. Maybe he did not believe that he can convert his very small advantage into victory, and he went for a draw not to waste energy. But I'm going to be very curious what he's going to say us in the press conference.
All right, thank you very much for that, Judith. The match score very suddenly there, tied 2.5 to 2.5. What I will say there is the decision to capture leading us into a French exchange, the decision to play d takes e5 on move 23, and the liquidation at the end of the game. I think it's unprecedented that we've left Judith Polgar speechless 3 times in a single game. So that is particularly noteworthy, I think, from our part here. Judith, I have to bounce that straight back to you. Even though the game ended in a draw, it was dead equal for quite a lot of it. We had quite a lot of surprises sat here.
We had a lot of surprises because at first it seemed that Gukesh had chosen an opening which is very much against his style. After that, he was bringing out this very aggressive g4, which I was mentioning during the commentary because I wanted to observe every possible move which can be played on the board. That move was very risky for Gukesh. After that, Ding played very well. Up to that point, Ding played very well anyway the whole game. But something was shifting around after g4, some exchanges of pawns, and this d takes e5 capturing back by Gukesh. It was a very unexpected decision, playing it instantly without thinking. And after that, it was very interesting, nice to see how Gukesh recovered. And he started to play the best moves very actively. And but I'm pretty surprised. I'm pretty sure that he's also kind of surprised that to save the game after that, it was so easy.
So there we have it. Maybe not in the manner we were expecting, Robert, but certainly a lot of twists and turns here in game number 5 as the scoreline stays level going into the next part of the weekend. Go ahead and give us a breakdown of how that game went from start to finish.
Thank you, John. And while Judith, she was left speechless, I'm going to have to do the talking, and I will let most of the moves do just that, because as we approach this game review, it was a game of an early surprise, and we saw that Gukesh, he chose to play against the French defense, and he decided to play the exchange. So let's dive into the details. Let's look at the specifics, because in this draw, we started out early in a symmetrical structure against the French defense, unlike earlier in the match where we saw pieces stay on the board. Today, we saw e takes d5, not seen as the most ambitious line, often seen as quite toothless, but in this continuation, we saw development. That all made sense. It kind of resembles a Petrov. And then after c5, which is a great response, it's challenging for the center. If white does take, black takes back, saddled with an isolated queen pawn with activity around it. But in this one, we saw the quiet c3, pushing to c4, which is committal. There is no longer tension in the center, but what black does gain is space on the queen side and a tempo against this bishop. The bishop dropped back, the bishop develops. We were talking about the potential of those white bishops aiming towards the black king side, but that was neither here nor there, because in this game, queen e2 check. You didn't want to block with the bishop on e6 because knight g5 hits that bishop. It's going to be 2 bishops for white on an open board. That's not at all what Ding wanted. He followed the chessable course of Anish Giri with queen e7, and after a trade of queens, king takes e7. I once again want to go and give this move an exclamation point. It was not expected, anticipated by Gukesh, but it is a great reply, and the reason why is that black, that's another exclamation point. I'll take them all away here, but the rook gets to e8 quickly, the king goes back to f8, and I'll just show you what happened in the game. Just that, the ambulance, there I see the sirens in the background, but it was for neither player as this game remained peaceful for quite a long time. King f8, the rooks are traded, and those are all the arrows drawn about what could have been. And in this game, knight d7, it looks a bit passive. The bishop is not getting out just yet. No development for this rook either, but you are just defending your knight. You didn't want to ruin your pawn structure. The knight helps out the other. And as the game continued, knight d2, h6, this was a good decision. In many variations, that pawn was within the bishop's line of fire. It could have been captured, so it comes up 1 square with tempo, and as the rook comes in with check in the next couple moves here, the king slides to f8, and this was a huge moment in the game. I think it changed the game completely, the nature of it, when seeing that g5 is going to be played, the bishop will come back, the knight can take that bishop, suddenly black gets the bishop pair and can still go for b5 and b4. Here, Judith Polgar became a prophet. She played, and suggested rather, g4, which is what Gukesh played in this game, and it caught me by surprise. I said Capablanca would be shaking his head in disbelief because it's such a weakening move. It attacks a knight, sure, but it allows that knight to sink its teeth into the f4 square, a valuable outpost. And what's an outpost? It means a pawn can't kick that piece out, so it can stay there as long as it isn't under pressure, but immediately a pressure was applied, and you see the arrows come back. That knight on d7's hopping out the way, allowing this bishop to open up to this g4 pawn. But which way to go? Knight f6 is what we expected, but in the game, knight b6 was played, and I do think that caused some concern in Gukesh's position. He sees his g4 pawns under attack, he decides to push that pawn, and now the only move was h takes g5. There's a tactical reason why. Knight h3 check looks like it wins a pawn. The bishop on d6 can't be captured just yet because it's checked to the king, but after the king moves out the way, if you take on g3, no, white will not take back, which allows black the time to take on g5. Instead, g takes h6 first, the point being that if the bishop retreats, h7 and then h8 becomes unstoppable, a new queen appears, white wins the game. So this would give white the upper hand. And instead we see h6, g5, the correct move. Once again, bishop d7, accurate play from Ding Liren. And I'm going to fast forward here, rook e8, it looks peaceful, but here is a really bad oversight from Gukesh. Rook takes e5. This would have resulted in a very equal game because if the knight comes to d3, now after the trade of pieces, b3 is available. There is no, as you see the arrows come up, no rook c8. The c3 pawn can't be attacked, which means it's defended. In the game, on the other hand, we saw the pawn capture back. It deserves that question mark, and I'm not trying to be harsh. You could see by Gukesh's reaction to knight d3, he just completely misevaluated something here. After bishop takes, pawn takes, no longer is b3 such a good suggestion because b3 allows this rook to come to c8. This c3 pawn's in the line of fire. If you defend passively with a move like rook c1, their idea is like pawn to d4, exploiting a pin, and after c4, even more exploitation of that pin, knight to d5, and you can see that all of black's pieces are pouncing, ready to go on the offensive. The knight comes into c3 or to b4, and knight e2 check. The a2 pawn is loose. There are huge problems, and those passed pawns are a thorn in white's side. So in the game, we did see the pawn come to f3. I want to call that a very, very strong move, and I'm going to give an exclamation point because just when it looked like Gukesh was on the back foot, in some trouble, he finds f3, which allows either his king to slide up to f2 or the bishop to retreat to a new diagonal. And as this game continued here, knight c4, the trade happens, and the game ends prematurely. At this moment, bishop e6 is what Jude and I were talking about. The reason is that you protect your pawn, which is under attack, and then you can later maybe bring your rook up and try to pester the white queen side. It's not necessarily going to be a winning game, but black is the side for choice, and you can play for a win without risk. In the game, it ended suddenly. Bishop c6, not a bad move by any stretch of the imagination. Rook takes c4 is a game-ending blunder. After rook d8, you have a problem. The D pawn's going. If you try to trade rooks, unfortunately, you're a move too slow. D2 happens, and you can't stop D1. Your king is not in the square. You're not in time to stop the pawn. So after bishop c6, rook d4, the best move was played. And after bishop takes f3, king f2, bishop h5 at least keeps black with an extra pawn. Rook takes c4 is not possible because d2 and the d1 square is protected by this bishop. So this would have been winning for black if you take the pawn. And white can just continue marching in the center with king e3. Black is better. There is no real risk in the position. You play for a win and hope that your opponent makes a mistake. But in the game, Ding just says, I'll back up. And in fact, after the next few moves, the rooks are traded, and it's white who is a pawn ahead. The game is completely objectively a draw because black has all the control of the light squares. All you need to do is move your bishop back and forth, and there's literally nothing that can be done to win this game. But it ends in a draw very quickly, and that's your recap. What could have been a press for a win ends in an abrupt draw. The match remains tied 2.5, 2.5.
Thank you very much for that, Robert. Really interesting psychology going on here in the game where Ding could have pressed for a win, opted to liquidate instead and get a draw. Objectively not bad, of course, because it's still with the black pieces. But now we're going to be heading live to Singapore as the press conference is about to begin. So, Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, take it away.
When you played bishop c6 instead of bishop h5, did you consider bishop h5? Did you realize you had a significant advantage? What prompted you to actually play the move bishop to c6?
Yeah, but bishop c6 is basically a draw offer. Bishop h5, king e3, and b5.
I mean, the game continues.
Yeah, I thought his queen rook activity can compensation for the pawn, but I can protect it. Yeah.
When you play bishop a6, it was the intent to, or bishop c6 was the intent to make a draw at this point. I'll ask you, Gukesh. You must have seen bishop h5. What was your feeling about the position at this point?
Yeah, I knew that I should be like slightly worse after bishop h5, but I thought with an active rook I should be able to hold. But actually a few moves earlier I was not sure about my position. I mean, first of all, knight c4 I was not sure about, but also I don't know why opponent did not play bishop e6 after knight c4 take rook e4. For example, bishop e6, rook d4, rook c8, I was very worried about this position. And then after bishop c6, I was already quite relieved, and after bishop f3 and bishop c6, that was just a draw offer, so yeah.
So now stepping back one step to this position, why didn't you play bishop e6 here instead of going for the bishop c6 idea?
Well, I didn't see the idea rook c8, rook c5, and then move the king to the king side, like some kind of burning pawn structure. I didn't realize it's a big advantage for me.
Did you come into the game with the mindset that a draw with black would be a good idea?
No, I just tried to play my best, but somehow I settled for the draw.
Before, if we go peel back a little bit more to this moment, rook e5 was the recommended move here. Did you realize how much trouble you were in after you took and he put a knight on d3?
Yeah, I mean, once I saw knight d3, I realized I just blundered with d5. I didn't know how bad it was really, but yeah, of course I should have played rook e5. I mean, it would have been a draw anyways, but yeah, d5, knight d3, I kind of just hallucinated here. Like, I mean, knight d3 I saw, but somehow I underestimated that he can, like, after take b3 as rook c8, and I just have troubles holding my position. And okay, my position is almost collapsing, so Yeah, I mean knight d3. I just blundered. So. But okay.
What was your feeling in the moment? I mean, were you a panic at this time when you saw that knight d3 was so strong, or did you manage to keep your cool?
Like I was a bit annoyed that I didn't play rook e5, but honestly during the game I thought should always be quite holdable because I have some squares, surely unpleasant, but I was pretty confident that I could hold it.
The strength of knight d3, did it occur to you when he didn't play rook e5 that suddenly you had a fantastic position, that everything had turned around?
Yeah, here I briefly considered rook e5, but he played d3 e5 very quickly. Actually, so here maybe he should play knight e5 and I take. Oh, he take with the pawn knight d3 and take rook e3. Maybe the game should play like this. Yeah, I can. And take the 2 pawns here. Maybe knight d1 is the move. Knight a4, he has rook b4. Well, considering this variation, so I'm very surprised to see g5 on the board.
So again, the strength of knight d3 was it clear to you that you were suddenly much better, or did you feel that it was still pretty much an equal position?
This was my idea after knight b6, because instead of knight d, if I play this, I'm not sure if it's good or not, because the pawn is very weak on f4. He had many ideas, for example, knight d, f3 and g5.
Okay. I will open the floor to the press. Please state your name and where you're from before you ask your question.
Bidya from Chessbase India. My question is to Ding. When you played the move knight to c4, did you consider keeping the knights on board, like on the move, or like move knight to a4 or something? Move 25, I guess.
So in this moment, instead of playing knight c4, to play knight a4.
Mm-hmm. I thought here maybe some d4, but he can play c4. If I go here, he rook b1. Or maybe just king f2. And no.
The engine likes bishop f2 in this position.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit trickier. But the idea of keeping the knights on the board seems reasonable, because the opposite ending could potentially, even though the engine's saying your choice was the number one choice, knight c4. But it's a reasonable question, the idea of knight a4. Did you ever consider it as better, or you rejected it eventually?
With knight a4, what if he just play king f2? The threat.
Take. Not sure this is. Now taking
rook d8. Mm-hmm.
So seems knight c4 was simpler way to go, more solid. Next question.
Hello, this is a question for Ding Liren, Michael Rahal from Fide Media. So, Ding Liren, I was quite surprised to see that you spent nearly 40 minutes to go for h6 and then knight to h5. And I was trying to think what other moves or variations you were considering in that huge amount of time for those two moves. Could you show us on the board what other things you were thinking of instead of the move you played h6 and knight to h5? What other variations you were considering?
I would mainly consider this line occurred in the game, because g4 looks so tempting for white. And if I play something like b5, he just check and play knight e5. And I don't know how to continue. Some more like bishop f4 coming with some threat. And here, yes, my main concern was on this position, and here first I considered knight f6, but as I said before, here b5, knight 3, maybe a5, I don't know, g5, or rook a7. I saw this variation, but I don't know. Yeah. Also, I considered something like g5, but maybe not so good, h4.
So to follow up with this, in your long think, you were already sensing that Gukesh would go for this aggressive g4 idea.
By the end, I thought maybe it's the only way to play. After I play this, I realized I have knight b6. Yeah, but he can also play maybe knight f1, play solid.
Probably g5, yeah.
Knight f6.
This is Charlize asking on behalf of your fans on Fide's social media channels. And this is to Gukesh. What kind of training did you get from your mental coach, Paddy Upton, and how has it helped you so far?
I have been working with Paddy for the last few months in preparation for this match, and first of all, it's very enjoyable, the work we do. I mean, we have had a lot of conversations, and he has helped me a lot to mentally and physically prepare for the match in different ways. Probably after the match, maybe it would be nice to go over the details, but yeah, I can say that our work together has been very enjoyable and very, very important for me in preparation.
This is Mike Klein with chess.com, and I have a question for Grandmaster Gukesh. Of course, you lost with e4, but then you won with d4, and you went back to e4 today. I'm curious, since we're 5 games into the match, has there been any time in the match where you've wanted to play something and Grandmaster Gajewski wanted to play something else, and you had to sort of, one of you had to convince the other one? So, or have you guys both been in lockstep with what openings you're looking to play?
I think it depends on the game and our moods, and obviously when we take a decision, it's together with my thinking and my team's thinking. So sometimes we are on the same page, sometimes we are not. But yeah, we just try to make the best decision, and I guess the main goal is for me to be happy with the decision.
And can you comment specifically about today's game? I think it may have only been the second time in the history of the World Championship we've seen an exchange French, so not many of us were expecting that. But can you comment about today's decision? Was it your decision? Was it his decision? Did you agree about it?
I mean, obviously it was, in the end we all agreed with this. But it's a cool fact that it's only the second time exchange has been played. Which was the first time?
Don't want to misspeak.
Okay.
I'll get excoriated for that, but we'll look it up for you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just a good opening, which is also quite topical these days. So, yeah, I guess I was, prep-wise, I was, happy. I mean, I guess he was playing on the board from early on, and we just got a game. But yeah, it did not. I guess it did not pose too many problems for him this time.
Thank you.
Ian Rogers, Sharks Magazine 64. Question really for Mr. Gukesh, but both players can answer if they want. How satisfied are you with the progress of the match so far?
I think it's still early to say. I mean, not even close to halfway done through the match. Considering I was trailing this match after the first game, it's nice to be here. But yeah, there's a lot more important games to come, and yeah, I'm just trying to play one game at a time and give my best.
You're sounding like Mr. Gelfand. You're sounding like Boris Gelfand at his press conferences. He said that at every single press conference, playing one game at a time. And Mr. Ding, how satisfied are you so far in the match after 5 games?
Well, results is not the ideal one because I have some chance in some games, and I will lead by some point, and then it was even. Also today, after some brief check, I have some advantage, which I didn't realize. So yeah, there's something to improve in the next round.
Thanks.
Hi, Abhinav from US Chess. Gukesh, you've played G4 in 3 white games, all of your white games, funnily enough, this match. But there was another option, a more classical or positional option with knight f1, trying to reroute to e3 and targeting the weak d5 backward pawn. Was this ever crossing your line of thought, or did you want to go for the most critical, concrete line with g4 for the 3rd time?
Yeah, it's cool that this was, 3rd game in a row I'm playing g4. But this knight f1, obviously it's the move it was one of the moves I considered, but I thought g4 was the critical one. Knight f1 I was mainly worried about g5, bishop g3, knight g3, h, I guess at g3, knight f6, and he gets bishop e6, and it's like extremely solid position with black. I have the f5 square, but his bishop on e6 is quite solid, and some b5, b4 might happen. So I didn't think this was enough to press. That's why I went for g4, but probably it was also not as good as I expected it to be.
Quick follow-up. In the other 2 instances, you played g4 in the opening, but here you chose it as a critical line. The question is really more about the opening. What was, a little bit, without giving it away, the rationale behind the exchange French, something a little bit more tame than your critical and uncompromising style?
I think it's it's just a good opening. Obviously we are preparing for the game, and I play some opening only if I think it's good, and if it's good enough for a game. So this time it did not work so great, but I don't think it was the opening's fault.
My question is to Gukesh. Did you expect Ding to play the French defense, and were you happy with the position after you played the French exchange variation?
Ding played French already in the first game, so it's obviously one of the things that we expected. And the exchange French, I was prepared till he played King e7. I'm sure I saw King e7, but I couldn't remember the details. And in general, the position was kind of what we expected will happen on the board. So I was happy with that, but probably I didn't have any serious chances anywhere. Maybe I could have improved early on, but yeah, I think maybe I kind of overestimated my position in the opening.
A quick follow-up of chess question. We have seen a lot of times you've closed your eyes when you're playing the game. So is it possible to reveal, are you calculating or thinking at that point, or just trying to keep a clear head?
I guess it's just normal. I usually do this, I close my eyes quite often during games. And sometimes it's just that it's easier to calculate with your eyes closed. Maybe at some point I'm also I'm sitting there in this room. There's nothing else to see, so I'm just closing my eyes. But yeah, mostly I'm just thinking about the position.
I'm Xiaobing from organization. I have a few questions for Ding Liren. First of all, 请你谈一下今天的对局，以及对手今天在法兰西防御中选择异地的变化有没有出乎你的意料？
My name is Gu Xiaobing. I have a few questions for Mr. Ding Liren. My first question is, were you surprised by the choice of the exchange French from Mr. Gukesh?
从这比赛用时来看，我也是对这个交换法兰西有一定准备的。对，但是他马币第二这步棋出乎了我的意料，然后临场我就需要去思考。我觉得我走的还不错，一直下的还不错，直到我就最后时刻，可以继续，比如说走向1-6，但是在把王从王翼出来，这个计划我没有想到，然后可能车在后翼有很大的这个前景吧。就是这盘棋也是下了半盘好棋吧，后半盘就有点粗糙。
That was a very long answer, by the way, so I'll do my best. Mr. Ding said that he was in general well prepared for the French defense. He was a bit surprised, I think, by knight b d2, and so he started thinking sometime after that. He felt he played quite well in the first half of the game. He did feel that maybe after rook e4, bishop e6, and then the king comes to the king side, and perhaps black has some chances to press there, so perhaps he missed some small opportunities there towards the end. So he felt it was half a good game by him, and the other half probably could have slightly improved somewhere.
第二个问题就是来到新加坡也有一段时间了，对新加坡的印象怎么样？有没有在圣淘沙里面转一转？谢谢。
So the question was, Mr. Ding, you've been in Sentosa in Singapore for quite some time now. What's your general impression of Singapore, and have you had the chance to tour around Sentosa Island so far?
对，我不仅在圣淘沙待着，还中间一开始还出去踢了场球，所以对新加坡整个城市的面貌也有一点了解。这里还是挺繁华的，然后挺先进的。圣淘沙是一个挺舒服的一个度假的区域，但接下去我还是更多的关心接下来的比赛吧。
So I also had an opportunity early on to even have a game of soccer before the match started, which I really enjoyed. Obviously, Singapore is very modernized, prosperous, and a very modern city. So I've had a good stay, but I'm going to focus my attention further on this match on the games.
Michael Rahal again from Fide Media. So we have quite a few very interesting questions on our Twitter feed. I've selected one. I would like to ask both players, aside from chess, which sports person do you admire the most, aside from chess? Mr. Gukesh.
I mean, when I was younger, it was Indian cricketer MS Dhoni. Now it's Novak Djokovic. I think both are great athletes, and I really admire a lot of things about them.
Well, it's hard to say the words admire. Before, I like the player. When I watch NBA a lot, I like Lamar Odom. And then I like Federico Chiesa. They are not that famous, but they are just in my favor.
My final question is for Gukesh. As you know, your countrymen, fellow colleagues, grandmasters are playing all over the world. Nihal Sarin has just won the Uzbekistan President's Cup, and other players are participating in important tournaments. I was wondering, do you stay in contact with them during the event, maybe on social media, and cheer each other on their successes?
Okay, firstly, I didn't know Nihal won this. Firstly, congrats to him. I mean, during the tournament, I generally don't talk to many people outside my team. But yeah, it's always nice when Indians, Indian youngsters keep achieving things. It's motivating for all of us. So yeah, I'm glad about that.
Thanks. I have a question for Ding, but just to close the book, apparently Capablanca Alekhine 1927 was an exchange French and black won. My question is for Ding. This Queen E7 endgame apparently is covered in Anish Giri's chessable course, and I'm just curious if you knew about that course. He said the endgame is fine after Queen E7. So are you aware of this course?
No, but he's right.
Indeed, you proved that today. Thanks very much.
We'll have just a few more questions, please.
I wanted to take the peaceful result as an opportunity to ask both of you without revealing too much. Can you both give a game of your opponent that you were particularly impressed by in their chess career?
I remember, I think in 2019 or something, Baijin Shi Ding was probably his best game, which as a kid I really enjoyed. Yeah.
I know my opponent beat Pragnanda many times with both colors. I remember one game he had white and his center made, it was Italian, and his center made a huge role in his victory.
Any more questions? All right, well, that concludes our press conference for today. We will be back again tomorrow for Game 6 at 5 p.m. local time. Good night, everyone.
So that is the conclusion of the press conference. Thank you very much, Maurice, and the rest of the team on the ground there. 2.5 after 5 games. A couple of interesting quotes from the press conference. I think my favorite has got to be in reference to Anish Giri's chessable course. I didn't, but he's right. Absolutely brilliant answer there. And Robert, as they alluded to in the press conference and in the chessable course, everything turned out just fine in the end. But it's interesting that it gave them some food for thought.
Oh, there's so much to take away from that press conference. First of all, Ding was quite smiley. He was laughing. He was, making jokes as well, and it's a different Ding than we've seen in previous days. So it's good to see him just as a human being, not even so much as a chess player, in this sort of happy state. And I couldn't believe a reference to Lamar Odom. I'm a huge NBA fan, so to hear Ding reference the former NBA star, that's great to hear. But I think another massive takeaway is that Ding didn't realize how much he was better, and it's Magnus Carlsen's birthday today. And while he's not involved in World Championship matches anymore, I think that we look at that position and we're used to seeing someone like Magnus press, and even if it takes 150 moves, Magnus would play that game on until his opponent fell asleep from just pure exhaustion. So that, I think, was a really surprising element, but I want to give a lot of credit to both Gukesh for his sturdy defense and also to Ding, because Ding was rattling off very impressive variations. It's clear that he saw G4 in advance, and he was just firing off all these lines that took a lot of foresight. So there was some negatives, I think, from both players that you could take away from that, like Gukesh's just a miss of knight d3 and the incorrect recapture in e5, but a lot of positives for both of them.
I'd love to expand on that with you just a little bit, Judith. Some of the lines that Ding was talking about in the press conference were amazing to follow, and I'm glad that Maurice was also showing us what he was thinking on the board there. It was really impressive to see his thought process, but in the same breath, it was really interesting to reconcile that with the fact that Ding wasn't aware that he had such an advantage and could have pressed further. What do you make of those? Because it feels like such a strange juxtaposition.
Yes, I think this was very surprising for all of us, that somehow I had the feeling that he was shocked by the discovery at the press conference that he has been such a great position, what he actually offered a draw with by playing bishop c6 and simplifying everything. And it means that the mindset is maybe has to be polished and changed a little bit for Deng, because it seems like he doesn't have that kind of self-confidence that with black he is able to grab the chance, and if the chance is there, then he has to push it. So he was not. He was looking for equalization. Actually, not even equalization, because he said that in Anish's course he didn't know about, but actually he is right. And so it was kind of very strange that he was not able to move on during the game and take this opportunity, because this is some of the most important thing I believe in a world championship match, that you don't get too many opportunities, and usually those opportunities are very small sometimes, but this was an opportunity, golden opportunity, which he missed. So it will be very difficult for him, I think, to get over it. And with Gukesh, it was interesting that he said at some point that I overestimated my position probably at some point. Yeah, I feel this, that he's very optimistic, and we see this in his game. So we'll see how it will work out.
All right, so that was round number 5. We'll be moving into round number 6 tomorrow. We had the last rest day, of course, earlier on, but we still have a game day tomorrow before there's a rest day the day after. Let's take a look at what time that starts, depending on where you're watching in the world. If you want to set an alarm to come and tune in, you absolutely can. It's a little bit early in the morning or late at night, depending on how you choose to see things. From the United States, it's 1 a.m. on the West Coast or 4 a.m. on the East Coast. And then it goes all the way through to 8 p.m. if you're tuning in from Sydney. The match, of course, starts at 5 o'clock in the afternoon local time in Singapore. So, folks, plenty to discuss for today and how the match is poised overall. Still nice and even. Robert, maybe a word on Gukesh, because during the press conference we were talking about how Ding saw everything. His energy levels were up. It was interesting that he didn't necessarily see that he had much of an advantage, but maybe not so much said about Gukesh and where his head is at now.
Yeah, in some ways, Ding even responded to a partial storyline that he feels like he's the one who squandered several chances at this point, because with the white pieces, maybe he wasn't as ambitious as he could be, and then with black in game 3, I mean, he got his bishop trapped on c2. That was clearly not optimal, and then here in game 5, he could have pressed without risk. So that is part of the storyline. And then I would say from Gukesh, he was rattled, and you don't see that very often. He is one of the most stoic players that you could possibly imagine. But you could see at the board he completely overlooked something in these knight d3 lines, that his c3 pawn would be weak, and so he was rattled, but he immediately recovered. And I think that is one of the signs of a champion. You're not always going to be perfect. In fact, you're not always going to be good. But when you make mistakes, how you're able to rebound from those, that is a mark of a champion. And so for Gukesh to just immediately kind of realize things are going wrong, he wasn't pressed to really defend. So we didn't get to see how mighty his defense could have been. But for Gukesh, he acknowledged that he overlooked something. He's been very transparent in the interviews. He talks about his work with a mental coach and trying to perform better, and talk about the psychological components of the game. So it's clear that Gukesh is working hard, and for Ding, there were smiles there, and there is reason for joy in the camp. 5 games in, 3 games of black, 2 for white. Ding has more white games ahead of him.
And I think that's a great point, Judith. At the end of the day, Ding might have had an opportunity to press today, but objectively, he's still doing pretty well. What are your thoughts on how the match is poised?
Well, it's the result is absolutely normal. I was expecting that something very tight match we're going to be witnessing. There are ups and downs, what we've seen in the first 5 games. It was not such a sharp game today, but I feel it has a very strong effect on the players, this draw. And it was interesting to see also that Gukesh was very relieved. This is what I felt. But it is very exciting, and there is a lot more to come. I'm pretty sure about that.
And before we sign off, just a little bit of a bonus for you today, Judith. As I understand it, you will not be with us from tomorrow due to commitments elsewhere, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm speaking on behalf of not just Robert, Danya, and myself, but the viewers as well, to have the greatest of all time lend her voice to this broadcast. So I just want to say a massive thank you and all the best for the coming days.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure working with you.
Folks, this is our coverage concluding for round 5 of the Fide World Championship. But we'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow. So make sure you set your alarms, you get ready, and we will see you on the morrow. Good night.
When Ding has the black pieces, it seems like we get those combative games. So once again, white pieces for Gukesh. You can't just assume that we will have a quiet affair.
We've got a French once again.
Judith, I don't even need to see you to probably guess that the exchange French defense was not going to be on your radar for today's match.
What is this? It is so much not Gukesh.
I'm also, Judith, trying to come up with an explanation, maybe unhappy memories of the first game's result. Ooh, and king takes e7. We are entering a queenless middle game. Gukesh said, let's get technical from the start. I'm so sorry, but I flicked on the engine, and g4 is actually one of the recommended moves for white. I can't believe that I'm saying that.
Oh my god, look at that.
Oh my goodness.
Crazy. It's crazy.
g5 is played, and h takes g5. It is the only move for black, and if not for h takes g5, then black is in trouble. You have to take with the rook, because I would be afraid of taking with the pawn. Did he just take with the pawn?
Yes.
I was worried about knight d3 here.
Ooh, it's a cold shower for Gukesh, I believe.
We see the players operating on their color complex. Black has all the control of the light square, so white is actually up a pawn now. Judith, a draw is a fair result in this current position. But Ding clearly did not maximize. The players are just about to sign the score sheets. You see them looking at each other. Here's the handshake. Game 5 is in the books.
Gemini, can you help me plan my 3-day vacation? Generate a photo of a muscly capybara.
Explain the concept of supply and demand with OpenStax.
Hi, Gemini. Quiz me on the rise of industrialization.
Can you help me find an email?
Yeah, I can help with that.
This December, the world's top chess minds clash in the heart of New York City at the Fide World Rapid and Blitz Championship. Witness world number 1 Magnus Carlsen and other stars from across the globe. Rapid and Blitz, chess in its most thrilling form, unpredictable and unforgettable. Fast moves, tactics and blunders, and moments that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Witness the pinnacle of chess excitement. Get your tickets now at worldrapidandblitz.fide.com.
This is the Google Pixel 9 with Gemini, and this is a look behind the scenes of a heated Fantasy League group chat, where Gemini's already made an image of a quarterback with noodle arms, a running back that's a snail, a Swiss cheese secondary, that's a new one, and now coming in hot, some wide receiver gloves made out of butter. Oh, let's see how they come back from that one. Still anybody's game, or anybody that has Gemini.